Hello everyone! I hope by the time that you are watching this video is you are well rested, you are hydrated, you have eaten and you are doing great in life. So this is the part of the analysis of concepts, and in this part of presentation we will be defining terms, as in a lot of terms. And your presenters for this session are Charliene, Dador, and Karylle and Plazo. This is Charliene, Dador speaking, and you will hear Karylle later. So let's get started. For the overview of the presentation, we have three major parts, which are, number one is vague and ambiguous terms. We will be defining them, compare and contrast, that I will be discussing later on. And for the next part, on definitions, this is the part that Karylle will discuss. And for the part, the analytic definition, this is the part that we are going to discuss to you. So let's go to part 1, which is ambiguous and vague terms. Here are the subtopics. So, ambiguous versus vague. So, what does these two words mean? So, ambiguous means open to more than one interpretation, having double meaning or subjective. That's why it becomes ambiguous. It's subjective because for me, I define this word as this, but for you, you define it differently. Sa vague naman, vague means something went wrong with the intention of the concept because this is objective. Kaya it's vague. You will know bakit siya naging subjective and objective, no? Like the next example, let's use good as an example for ambiguous. Well, as I said sa previous slide, ambiguous, a term, concept, or word is considered or becomes ambiguous because it's subjective. Like good. Good kasi is subjective. For a hedonist would prefer good to be bodily pleasure, so therefore any action that will provide or promote pleasure is good, such as eating, sexual intercourse, sweating from physical activities or exercises. Well, for a humanist naman, good means, good refers to the development of all your human potential. So, example nito is coming up with new and fresh ideas for a specific event, innovating something. For a utilitarian, any action that promotes the greatest happiness for the greatest number is good. A logic positivist, to express your approval of an act is good, which is, example for this is saying yes or approving the Sogi bill for the LGBT community. Kantian, this is from Immanuel Kant, if you wonder bakit naging kantian. An action is good if it is done in accordance with its duty. Let's make Harry Roque an example. So before Harry Roque became a presidential spokesperson, he was a human rights lawyer. So as a human rights lawyer, what you will do is, of course, defend your client in court, diba? Defend their rights. So that's good, diba? That's good kapag ginawa niya yon. Ang ginawa naman niya before. But as a presidential spokesperson, he would define his job as ipagtatanggol yung presidente. So kahit mali yung ginagawa ng presidente, he has to defend the president because that's his job. For him, that's good, but for me personally, it's not. Kasi alam mong mali, so bakit mo ito-tolerate, di ba? And we have different definitions kasi ng good. For me, I would define good as if I make someone happy, someone smile, I would say that's good. Pero sa iba, kayo ba? Let me ask you this question. How do you define good? You can comment down, or if you don't want to, then consider this na lang as a rhetorical question, but I encourage you to comment down kung sino man magpo-post ng video na to. So that's ambiguous, no? Again, ambiguous is subjective, that's why it becomes ambiguous. Kasi dapat maging specific tayo when using a term. For example, siguro start a sentence with, as a humanist, I would say, this act is good because, ganon. As a logic positivist, I would say, this is good because, ganon. Para hindi tayo nalilito kasi you might think that you might think this way, but the other person thinks that way. Kaya nagiging ambiguous or nagkakaroon ng confusion. Next, vague. So here are some examples. First is some. Diba, some in symbolic logic states that at least one but not all. Examples, some politicians are corrupt. So how many politicians are corrupt? At least one but not all. It's vague, diba? Because ilan yung some? At least one but not all. Ilan yun? Is it 2, 3, 4? For example, 150, kunwari yung politicians natin. Ilan sa 150 na yun yung corrupt? 50 ba? 30? 100? 130 para magiging majority na yun. Pero ilan, di ba? Pwede naman maging specific na 50 politicians are corrupt, pero hindi natin sure kasi iba is malinis. Basta, you know it. Basta yun, we can be specific naman. Example, majority of my classmates are smart. So, ilan doon? For example, we are 22 ba sa block? BB and 1B. We're 22. So, ilan ba yung minimin ko na smart sa block natin? Kung 22 tayo, 20 ba yan? Kung 15 ba, di ba? We can be specific naman. And ano yung standard ng smart? Paano mo nasabing smart siya or smart ito, di ba? We should be specific to avoid confusion. And here, example number 2 is pornography or obscenity. The fine line between them is difficult to demarcate, even for experts. So here, this is a nice example now. Because if a nude model poses and it's nilagay sa magazine, it would be considered as pornography. Photograph. And nilagay siya sa magazine or siguro sa mga TV, sa mga Facebook, sa mga sites, sa social media. If pinost yun, it would be considered as pornography and it's bad. But a nude painting of the same model is art. Diba? Bakit ganon? It was painted, naging art na siya. Kasi ganon naman talagang art, diba? Usually, but art is not limited naman sa painting lang. Kasi photography and art is art. Both are art. Pero bakit yung isa na photograph na nilagay sa magazine, pinost somewhere else is considered as pornography? Pero bakit yung art na pinink ng isang famous artist or anyone, basta artist, pinink siya, it was painted. But why is it considered art, diba? So, how will we say na this is pornography, na this is art? And as in fine line, it's hard to determine, diba? Does the medium matter? We're not sure, di ba? Kahit the experts, for them, it's hard to differentiate this. How much more for us? So, next. Ambiguity to antidote to ambiguity and vagueness, as what I've said kanina, is define them because definition will avoid linguistic confusion, not only in your writing but also in your thinking. Kasi when we hear someone speak or talk, and uses the term good, for example, that person defines good, maybe the person is a humanist or yung speaker is a humanist, but for you are a logic positivist. So, medyo nagkakaiba kayo ng perspective. Medyo magkakalituhan kayo. So, we should be specific to avoid linguistic confusion, not only to our writing but also to our thinking. And the purpose of definition naman is to provide information about the correct use of a term to avoid nga linguistic confusion. Next, fallacy of equivocation. This means confusion in using a term, using a word in one way and using it differently later. Here is the example. This tweet has been viral na for how many years? Before Philo, a chair is inuupuan lang. But after Philo, diba, in this world, nothing is a real chair. Puro chair. Ang daming chair is used dito multiple times and iba-iba yung ginagamit ng meaning. So, ayun, nako-confuse tayo. Ano ba yung hinimin niya ng chair? Isang chair lang naman, upuan, pero ang daming chairs dito and it was used in a different way. And next, linguistic confusion. Here, a speaker uses a term in one way while the listener takes it in a different way. Parang ano lang din to, ambiguous and vague. Here, example, Krebs. In science kasi, Krebs means the cycle of reactions catalyzed by enzymes or yung citric acid cycle. That's it. But sa language, specifically in German, Krebs means cancer. So, for example, you, a person who's obsessed with scientific facts or a scientist, tapos may kinausap siyang German, tapos na-mention yung Krebs. Of course, this scientist would think about the citric acid cycle, pero yung German na kinausap niya would think of it as cancer. Diba? Let's study Krebs cycle. So, yung minimi na scientist or scientific person is yung citric acid cycle, pero yung German naman is akala niyang aaralin nilang Krebs cycle is yung cancer. So, how and why is cancer formed? Ganon. And itong hand sign, this is something that I have learned sa Anto na lecture, because for us, or especially sa mga kids, or sa society, yung accepted meaning nito, here in the Philippines is money, crystal clear, okay, basic, mga Gen Z terms, pero sa American Sign Language, this means idiot pala. So kapag gumanon sila, that means, hey, you're idiot, pero sa atin, it's okay, it's good, crystal clear, money, I want money, ganon. Pero sa iba, sa mga Americans, this sign is different. Pero sa atin, yung first four. So, we should be specific para hindi nalilito. Baka akala natin the meaning of this is money, pero yun pala, sinasabihan ka na ng idiot, hindi pa natin alam. And antidote for linguistic confusion is never take part in any verbal dispute unless the disputants are using the same word in the same way. So, ayun nga, yung sinabi ko, balik lang tayo dito. Dapat, sure tayo or alamin natin kung sino o yung background ng someone we're talking to para hindi tayo malito. For example, example nga, itong dalawa. And next.
Thank you, Charliene. So now I'll be taking over. And good day everyone, my name is Karylle Plazo and I will be discussing the different methods of defining a term. And there are 6 types that I'll be discussing today, as you can see from the slides. So in this module, you'll be utilizing the concepts that you have learned in the first module by Emery and Levy to hone your ability to define any term, which is incredibly useful in your path as a critical thinker, not just in philosophy but also in your everyday life. So now let's move on to the first type of definition, which is definition by synonym. You define an unfamiliar term by using a familiar definition. For example, you don't know what an argument means, so you ask me, what does an argument mean? And I'll respond with an argument means a quarrel, or a belief means faith, or an alien means a foreigner. So in a conversational context, it's definitely fine to use definition by synonyms. But take note that it is an error in definition because it is a circular definition, which means that you define a term by using the same term or by its synonym. So it means that the reasoner begins with what they are trying to end with. And the perfect example of this is if you don't know what a cellular phone means, and I explain a cellular phone is a phone that is cellular. I didn't really explain what a cellular phone is with there. It doesn't make any sense, diba? So that's what circular definition means. And then next, we have ostensive definition, which is a term that can be specified by giving examples of members of the extension, either verbally or by a pointing gesture. So let's take the example of amphibian. So an amphibian denotes animals like frogs and turtles. But then do you guys realize that there are also many types of amphibians? Not just frogs and turtles. There are also crocodiles that are true amphibians but are not included in my examples, diba? So, ayun, a concept learned through ostensive definition is incomplete. So hopefully you guys understood what I meant by that. And then now you have the intension and extension. So this one, so for ostensive definition, you stated the examples. And then for this one, for intention and extension, you also included the intention. Imbes na examples lang yung binibigay mo. So this one, you state the term's intension without vagueness, and you give examples of the members of the extension. So for a complete understanding of the concept, please use simple, clear, and precise language to describe intention. For example, the intention of amphibians are animals that live in both land and water. And the examples are of other members of the extension are crocodiles, anaconda, conga eel, etc. And then next we have reportive definition. So you provide information about how a term is being used in the same way in numerous language, games, or real-life situations. So basically, it is the standard or conventional use of a term. So this type of definition is mostly used in dictionaries because dictionaries only aim to equip you with the knowledge as to how to use a word in everyday life. So an example of a reportive definition is a bachelor means an unmarried man. And then now we have stipulative definition. So yung reportive definition, diba, is all about the standard or conventional use of the term. And then this one, you depart from conventional use. So what do I mean by that? It means that you use the term in a very unique way in a language game. So it is normally used to specify precise use of the key terms in scientific research, in legislation, or in philosophy. For example, technical or scientific terms like normal, introvert, extrovert, DNA, RNA, atoms, molecules are introduced through stipulative definitions. And do you guys realize something? Yung mga words na to, you guys understand what they mean, di ba? And it is because of stipulative definitions in studies that through stipulative definition, people are able to use these words in everyday life. So, ayun guys, note that if you are using a term in a specialized way, you are duty bound to warn your readers about your stipulative definition so as to reduce miscommunication and misunderstanding. So now I will be discussing operational definition. So it is a technique used in the sciences to bring concepts on the plane of observation. So these concepts are normally concepts whose intention and extension are not directly observable, like theoretical terms. And there are two types of operations that can be performed to observe the concept's intention. And the first one is instrumental operations, which are performed by devices for observation like a microscope or a telescope. So scientists use microscope to observe very minute things like cells, diba? So from there, they can deduce their hypothesis about what they're studying. And second, we have the paper and pencil operations, verbal operation, and thought experiments, which are normally used for psychological tests. And an example of the application of this method is the term intelligence quotient or IQ, which a lot of us are quite familiar with. And IQ can be operationally defined through a pencil and paper test like the Binet IQ test, which was formed by Alfred Binet. So Charliene will be discussing analytic definitions next.
So we are on the last part of our presentation, and if you reached this part, congratulations! So for the last part, we are going to talk about analytic definition. So what is analytic definition? It is focused on the statement of the intention without vagueness and the offering of typical examples of the extension. Some examples are definiendum, definiens, and denotata. So definiendum is the term to be defined, while definiens provides the intention or the defining property of the definiendum. While denotata provides, balik muna tayo sa definiens. Definiens, shortcut for this is the description. Denotata provides samples of the extension and intention of the definiendum. To visualize, here. Bird. Dun muna tayo sa bird. Bird is the term to be defined wherein we will use genus and differentia for the description, so we could provide the best example or examples of a bird with the corresponding description. So, genus muna tayo. Genus is the wider concept in which the definiendum is a member, while differential naman states that traits or characteristics that distinguish the definiendum from other species in the genus. So, bird is an animal with feathers because some birds don't have feathers and some birds fly, some don't. For this part, birds with feathers and don't fly. And yung example ng birds na yun are ostrich, chicken, and pelican. Because there are birds with feathers and fly, like parrot, hummingbird. But for the given description naman, is ostrich, chicken, and pelican are the best examples. And next, mammal. Genus is mammals, and differential that lays eggs. And the example is platypus. Because some mammals don't lay eggs like humans. And next, balik muna tayo dito. By the way, we provided more examples of analytic definition and linguistic confusion in the handout. So check them out if you want to know more examples. So next.
So there are common errors in definitions that you are really supposed to make, like producing a definition that is either too broad or narrow. So what do I mean by that? Take for example, if you define birds as animals that fly, it is too broad and not entirely accurate because there are animals like bats that can fly but are mammals instead of birds, diba? And then on the other hand, defining birds as animals that sing or talk is too narrow because animals that are genuine members of the extension but cannot sing or talk are excluded. Like crows, diba? They cannot sing or talk, so they're excluded in the members of the extension. But don't worry guys, we have already prepared 5 rules in composing a definition in order for you to minimize your errors in definition. So the first rule is a sound definition states a trait or a set of traits, characteristics, or functions that members must possess. It should not be too broad to include non-members or too narrow to exclude genuine members. So I'm not gonna expound on this because I already explained it just now when I was explaining the definition of birds. And then rule 2, definitions must not be circular. So I already explained this. So circular definitions are circular, are using familiar terms to define unfamiliar ones. And then rule 3, a sound definition must not be stated in the negative when it can be stated in the affirmative. So state what it is, not what it is not. Like say for example, if I were to define a lamp, and I were to say a lamp is not a calculator, of course it's not a calculator, diba? So instead, what you can do to better your definition is a lamp is a source of light that reflects off of objects, diba? And then rule 4, a sound definition should not use figurative, obscure, and metaphorical language. An example of this is the concept of love, diba? It's a rather arbitrary concept. So it means that if you say like love means never having to say goodbye, you don't really explain what the true meaning of love is, diba? So ayun. And then rule 5, avoid defining using ostensive definition. It is an incomplete and misleading technique because you only state the examples, diba? But then you never stated the intention. So that concludes our presentation that me and Charliene have prepared for you guys. We really do hope that you have enjoyed it and that you have learned a lot about how to define a term properly. And we hope that this guides you in your path in becoming a critical thinker. So thank you and goodbye everyone. Good luck in your studies.